Hi, my name is Matthew Varnell. I'm the founder and president of Multi-Church Consulting. As a pastor for many years, church planner as well. And one of the things that we quickly learned when starting a new church or revitalizing an established church or financial procedures are the foundation for success, long-term success. If you want to build buildings, if you want to maintain a giving base, you have to have good, sound financial principles. Um, First of all, it creates safety in the mind of your congregation or your giving base. One thing we found is that people attend, they might even tithe, they might give, but if they don't feel sound in the financial principles, if they don't feel the finances are dealt with in a way of excellence, they're going to withhold monies from that congregation or nonprofit. So the more faith they have in the procedures and the excellence, and many of these are business people or successful business people, and if they don't see the finances being dealt with in that way, yeah, even if they attend, even they may like the ministries, they're going to be less generous than they could be. So we found the more confidence you give to your people and to your base, the more generous they become. So we're just going to quickly go over a few principles that we recommend and some things that we do when we come in and work with our partner churches. And we often can do board training, financial board training, executive pastor training, staff training, financial procedures with your staff, paid and lay staff. But one of the things is important to do is have a permanent church file. You need to keep things like your articles of incorporation, current copy of your constitution and bylaws, copies of all your real estate deeds, your federal employee identification number, and that we're going to touch a little bit later, but it gets into the two main causes of litigation and financial upheaval in the church, and it's going to do with employment restitution and payment. But having your federal employer identification, if you don't know what that is, you call us, please. Copy of all your insurance records and your leases, your contracts, and your notes. All that needs to be in your permanent file. Annually, we recommend that you check that your nonprofit corporation is active. For example, in California, that needs to be done annually. It depends on what state and even what county you're in, but for example, you buy a building, it used to be a for-profit, and now you're turning a nonprofit, you have to establish that. That's important to do annually, or you can run into big trouble and be assessed taxes back several years. And you can go say, hey, I didn't know we had to file this. They're going to say, sorry, but that was your problem. You need to pay the last 10 years. Well, you didn't send me a bill. Yeah, well, the government doesn't care about that, but they're going to still try to get that from you. So you need to do that annually. If your church controls other non-profit corporations that are not churches, you need to file an annual Form 990 or 199. We can help you with that. Call us. We can take care of that for you. We can work with you on that, but you need to file that. A lot of churches even rent part of their facilities out. They're going to want certain separation on the tax base for that. So even though you're a not-for-profit, when you have income from a for-profit area, sometimes you're going to have, you can get caught with that. So we definitely need to file our annual 990 and 199 for nonprofits that have some for-profit areas or income. I think it's occasionally, maybe not annually, you should run a preliminary title report for each of your properties. File your real estate property exemption with the county. We just talked about that. Make sure your insurance is paid. And also, annually, it's good to review your insurance policies. Make sure that everything's covered. You might have purchased a bus or a vehicle or a small building. Sometimes when I was a pastor, we bought a house next door and we used that. We had to redo our insurance to cover that property and that house. So it's a good time to make sure that everything is covered. Anything that was changed during the year is adjusted on your insurance, and make sure that your insurance policies are up to date. Now, the two areas where conflict most often takes place is failure to pay employment taxes and failure to have segregation of duties in handling the monies. And we're going to talk specifically about segregation of handling the monies, which can greatly reduce your risk of fraud in the church world. So, and fraud is a large problem in the nonprofit community, where trust is kind of a given. Add trust this person, and to ask them to have accountability is to show that you don't trust them. From the beginning, you say it doesn't matter who it is. It could be the pastor, it can be the pope, it can be that this is how we handle our monies, and we do it with the segregation of duties. That protects them as well as the church. If someone were to ever make an accusation against one of your ushers, against one of your bookkeepers, and you have these in place, they're going to be protected as well. So it's really a win-win situation. Let's go on, and we're going to look real quickly at some of the segregation duties, some of the things that we recommend to prevent fraud. Number one is to have a safe. You need to have a safe. Even if you're off-site, have a safe somewhere. Have a locked bag on the temporary site where the monies can be put in and they can be locked. Have a list of the safe codes. Who has a code for the safe? Change the code for the safe at least annually and renew that list. You have people that come on the board, it goes off the board, you have staff changes, so you need to change your safe combination on a fairly regular basis. Annual basis is fine, but you need to have a written list of who has that code. What we would recommend is, for example, the 3 T's of handling monies. Number one is that anybody that handles the money is a tither. We find that people that tithe do not usually steal. It's not always the case, but it certainly helps. Also, there should be two people with the money at all times. That protects people in case there's ever an accusation. It keeps fraud from occurring. If there's more than one people, it's very unlikely that they're both going to be in on stealing money. Of course, you don't have a husband and wife and count that as 2 people. They're 2 separate groups of people. You might have your head usher. Depending on the size of your church, if you have an executive pastor, for example, you could have a lay person such as your head usher and a staff member or executive pastor or accountant immediately count the money afterwards. So, and when I mean count, I mean a general count, checks, cash, things like that. So they get a total that's going to match your deposit slip. That's all you're looking for. You don't need to put down what each family gave at that time. This is just for each service. You put in a separate bag. So if you have multiple services, and then you do a subtotal for each service and then a grand total. That money is then put in an envelope with 2 signatures. And like I said, that's a quick count. It can be taken very quickly on that Sunday and then placed in your safe. We try to recommend Monday morning that it is then put into your financial software, and that's where you put it into the correct funds, you put it to the correct families, and then you make a deposit. That should be done during business hours while there's other people in the office. There should be 2 people in the room at all times while that's being done. There should be 2 signatures, and you can have one person make the deposit, but we recommend that the senior pastor or a senior staff member initials the deposit slip, the Sunday morning or weekend count, that is the just the grand totals and the subtotals. So there should be a pretty close connection between the subtotal on Sunday and the deposit slip. And if there isn't, then you can catch it immediately. And so all that is kept. So when you have 10 years, you're going to have each week, each month, each year, you're going to have a deposit slip. You're going to have a Sunday morning slip or weekend service slip that has the grand total and the subtotals. And you're going to have a signature by an executive or senior pastor staff member saying these 2 match up. That takes away any ability of fraud on the deposit end, people taking cash out offering. We've had many instances where trusted secretaries have been taking cash over years, and in some cases adding up in the millions of dollars that was stolen from one church. So it's very important from small church to large church to have these in place. Then the other, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, is where other fraud takes place is the paying of bills. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But again, the two-person rule is, a pretty important part in all of this. So have a safe at the church, have tithers, have two people, and have their signatures. And then that's the paperwork. So always have that all together. The person that deposits the money on Monday should be different than the people that count it. Okay, so the person that makes the deposit should be not the same person that is counting it. Let's just on Sunday on the weekend service. A bookkeeper should write the checks for all the bills to be paid. So someone who does not have a signature on the check should write all the bills, okay? And then someone else should sign and review them. That is the other part where fraud usually takes place, is the paying of bills. Someone starts paying their own electric bill or to their own business or their own cash. That way, if you have someone who writes the checks or prints the checks, if you're obviously using software, which most of us do, but they should not be a signature on the check. And also, while we're talking about this, we don't particularly recommend dual signatures. What happens in most cases is you just have someone pre-sign a whole bunch of checks and it just deletes it anyways. One signature, the senior pastor should be a signature, an executive pastor, our treasurer on the financial board should be a signature. You should have 2 or 3 people that can sign in case someone goes on vacation, there's an emergency, something like that, someone needs a check quickly. But the 2 signature model does not work in almost all the cases. You just, if you do this, you don't need 2 signatures, you just need 1, okay? So a bookkeeper should write all the checks to be paid. A pastor, executive pastor, treasurer should then sign them. And that should, of course, be on the budget or the board approval. Monthly reports, including a profit loss statement with a balance sheet with the funds separated, should be prepared and approved by the board and put in your permanent file forever. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, you can keep, I love, as far as a pastor, pulling out, when I'm in a board meeting, our financials from 3 years ago and say, wow, look at what God has done. In June of 2005, we brought in, $25,000 this month. Now we're bringing in $50,000. That's the growth God's given us. So we can look at that. We can go back and look at it, and having those professionally prepared statements will protect you from almost all accusations. Having an outside source will protect the church, it'll protect your reputation, and it will protect you as the pastor or the financial board. Let's see, we're going to close up with this, but let's just close with a couple of points. Department issues, and we talk a lot about fund accounting, and that gets into some specifics, but we don't have separate funds we do have separate funds. What we don't have are separate churches. So we don't have ministries that say, listen, I'm going to take in all our money, whatever we get, we spend, it's ours. That's not how it works. We budget funds. If there's something comes in specifically for a youth camp or something like that, that's different. But we don't have separate kingdoms, okay? So we don't recommend that the women's ministry, all that we collect our own money and we spend our own money. Everything needs to go through the church central office. That should be obvious, but in case it isn't, it needs to be done. All departments go through the church. They go through the financial board process. They go through the budgeting process, the approval of the financial board, or however you have it set up. And you don't have separate kingdoms, and then everybody's protected, including, because if something happens in a ministry of the church, the outside is not going to recognize that it's a separate entity. They're going to blame the church. So you want to have it all under one umbrella. One other thing, and I think this is a great, if you don't do this, I recommend giving receipts at least once a quarter. A lot of churches do it annually. We find that income actually goes up by up to 6%, if you give these quarterlies. Also, it helps if you have a problem, if someone's giving was misidentified, you can correct it quickly. And it also gives confidence that, hey, these guys know what they're doing. The money I give, it's being recorded, it's being set to the funds I asked it to be set for, and these guys are tracking every dollar I give them. I'm going to give more. So do the quarterly giving statements. And then, we're not going to go into it a lot now, but one of the other things I would like to just touch on before we close is personal finances for the minister. And, we deal a lot with that as far as setting salaries, helping with that, and having an outside source do that for the senior pastor, if not all the staff, is a great way to show your congregation that, hey, everything's above board. No one's getting filthy rich here. We're not taking money and buying Rolls Royces. We're getting paid what other pastors of churches of our sizes and education and longevity is what they are getting paid. So we can do that for you as well as work with your retirement accounts and things like that. So we love working with pastors, preparing your tax returns. We specialize in it. We do hundreds of ministers' tax returns every year. No one does it better than us, and we'd like to help you. We'd like to help your church. If we can help you, please give us a call. Our website is multichurch.net. You can reach us at matt@multichurch.net or pastorarnell@gmail.com. Please give us an email, send us a text, like this video, and we would love to work with you. Thank you.